But my hope is, and my plan and intent is to watchdog my community, just make sure it's open. And if one lawyer does that in every small community around the state, that's a lot of pressure. It's sort of...
Welcome, I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Let's talk about open records. We like transparency, don't we? We like it when our city council does things in front of us until they go into something called executive session, and then we're not too sure what they do. Matt Roane is an attorney from down in the southern part of the state who has been challenging these executive sessions. Now, by law, see if I got this right, Matt, any elected body can go into an executive session, but for very limited causes.
Correct.
If they're going to talk about personnel, if there's a contract that they're negotiating, if there's going to be legal action that they're looking at, aren't those basically it?
Privileged documents and matters subject to negotiation. So if you're negotiating with a private company, you don't want to have to talk about your strategy out in public. So that's a legitimate reason to go behind closed doors, talk about that and only that, and then come back out in public and continue with your proceedings.
To make sure of what they're talking about is really that, by law, don't they have to record that conversation, the executive session?
All portions of it other than attorney-client conversations. They can cut off the executive session recording for that purpose, but if they go into another one, they've got to cut it back on and take the rest of it so it can be reviewed.
So we're talking about a personnel issue, recording on. We're talking about a contract negotiation, recording on. We're talking to our attorney about privileged information, recording off.
Correct.
How do you know what they're talking about? So they record it, there's a record. You're involved in lawsuits asking judges to make these records more public. Tell me about this.
By law, before they go into these executive sessions, they have to announce what they're going to talk about and cite to the code section that authorizes it. So they give you those little breadcrumbs as they're required to by statute, and they're also supposed to provide as much other detail as they can about the conversation without destroying the purpose for the private discussion in the first place. So they're supposed to give you all these breadcrumbs, then they formally vote to go into executive session, and then they come back out. As a member of the public, that's all you have to look at and go, is what they said and what they talked about and described really match up with what I think happened behind closed doors? And if you don't, if you think something smells funny, that's when you can go to a judge. Well, first you ask for the tape. They, of course, say no, you can't have it. Go talk to a judge. You go talk to a judge, say, I want to present this evidence and have you review the tape. And if you support the reasonableness of your suspicion, the judge is supposed to then listen to the tape and determine whether something actually happened.
You're doing this right now in El Paso County. What is it that the commissioners had on the agenda that caught your eye?
There's not been a suit filed. We're in negotiations with them right now, trying to work it out voluntarily. The only description, and this is where a lot of the problems with these executive sessions begin and end, they don't give you all of the description they're supposed to. They cut it as close to the vest as they think they can to get and keep it as private as possible. But all they said is, we want to go into executive session to have a privileged conversation with our attorney and to discuss things subject to negotiations about Tabor.
About Tabor?
About Tabor.
The Taxpayer Bill of Rights.
Correct.
All right, pardon me, my hair goes up on this one, which is, what negotiations about the Taxpayer Bill of Rights? It's in the Constitution. That doesn't seem like privileged conversation. With whom are they negotiating over what? A potential tax increase?
Okay, now you're a lawyer and that's the case. You just looked at the breadcrumbs and said, this doesn't make sense. Now, they may have gone back there and there may be something that they needed to negotiate about Tabor. I'm sure there could have been legal questions. But that's all the breadcrumbs you have. The red flags went off, and now if they don't give you the tape, if you asked for it, you would have to go involve a judge and ask them, are there enough little pieces of evidence to suggest there's a problem? 9 times out of 10, the judge says the same thing. Don't know what actually happened, but it smells like something improper happened.
So then you're asking a judge to do the really awful work, because I've been on an elected board, I've been in executive committees. I wouldn't wish listening to that on people I despise. I mean, it's really awful stuff, but you're asking a judge to listen in on an executive session, take time out of his busy day, and go, wait a second, it sounds like they're negotiating and discussing whether they should go forward with a tax increase. That's not privileged. That should be open to the public. Or, no, they're talking to their lawyer about someone who's suing them over Tabor. And maybe that's not, I don't know. But how do judges really want to do this?
No, I think they hate it. I think they absolutely hate it. When I have a successful outcome in a lawsuit and we end up getting the tape at the end, you would think I would love listening to it.
Right.
Here's the fruit of the effort.
It's not the Watergate tapes. This is pretty boring stuff.
There's no, there's no books I'm writing on this stuff. all of Matt's men. No, it's brutal work, and I think that's why judges don't particularly love doing it. And the other part is some of it is private, and that's important to recognize. So they not only have to listen to it, they've got to go through each minute and parse out what's proper from what's improper. It's just, these are supposed to be expedited proceedings. Right. A year is a good time frame to get one resolved just in the trial.
Really?
Just in the trial court, in my experience.
In order to get a public record that should be public, it could take a year of going back and forth with the government, the district, and then a judge to try to see what really happened.
That's a good time frame.
That's a good time
Chalk
frame.
that up as a win. I've had them go on for 2 or 3 years, and if the other side of it is, if you win before the other side turns that tape over, they can appeal it. Add another 2 to 3 years to the process. It's unwieldy. It needs to change.
And what's so insulting about this, and we saw some of this silliness in Littleton on some things. Things happen with the tape. Sometimes the tape is garbage, but we don't know what goes on. Yet here in Colorado, we have this pride of transparency. We have this pride of open records. We have the Open Records Act, which allows us to look at these things. And I get it. It's nice to have private conversations with other decision makers, but that's not how open government works. So they found this workaround, and it does get abused. I'm not saying El Paso did it in this case. I don't know. How would we know?
Right.
Until somebody hears it. Now, you've made money doing this. So let me ask you the ethical question that sometimes you can win a case like this, and the courts will pay you for it. You gold-digging bastard, you. How dare you?
I'm used to it now, so that's the good news. It doesn't upset me anymore. The way the law works is if someone hires me, a traditional client hires me to advocate on their behalf, and they win, they automatically get their attorney fees reimbursed. The logic being, you shouldn't have had to have spent your own money to hold the government's feet to the fire.
By the way, let me stop there. This is a key part of good government. Because when you look for open records, when you're out there trying to just make something public that's legally supposed to be public, it can cost a fortune.
Yeah.
You've just mentioned that a year is a short time frame. 3 years isn't out of the question. And what people might not get is when you open up a lawsuit, a legal action, a legal complaint, it is open-ended. It could be depositions, it could be professional witnesses, it can be dragged on, and a regular person just doesn't have the cash.
And that's how I ended up becoming the plaintiff in some of these cases. I get calls, Matt, is this legal? Boy, it doesn't sound legal to me. Do you want to file a suit and pursue it? No, I don't want to do that. I don't have the money, and I don't want my name. It's a small community. I don't want my name on the complaint. And so about a year ago, I said, well, I'll ask for the record. I'm a citizen. I'm a lawyer too, but I'm a citizen as well.
Don't give me this. Lawyers can be people crap.
I don't buy it. And so I'd ask for the records, and they turned me down, of course. And I filed a suit with my name as the plaintiff. And the logic, you're right. This is a very important role, and that's what the state looks at private citizens to fulfill because the Attorney General's office just can't do all of this policing of government. So we applaud when citizens do it. So I thought, well, what if I do it? Will they applaud as loudly? Probably not, but I think I can still do this. And I'm representing myself. Can I get paid for my time? What's the difference if I'm representing John in a lawsuit and get paid for the time invested versus the same exact work, logic, briefs, time I put into it, but it's on my own behalf? I recognize the stomachs can turn a little bit. I mean, I get that, and I had to work through it.
But the point being, that we need to find ways to open up government transparency.
We need tension.
And the larger the government, usually the more transparent it is. That is, there are more watchdogs, there's more reporters, there's more activists. Colorado has 5,000 governments. Let me say it again, 5,000 governments, from school districts to cities to counties to library districts to cemetery districts to special districts. Each one should be open to the public and open records. And therefore, we need people to do this type of work. Do you recommend other attorneys follow your lead?
I do. I hope it's in their own small community. I hope attorneys aren't going all over the state just trying to poach bad meetings and create their own clientele. There have been some situations around the state that I've gotten involved in that have all arisen from one core issue, so it's sort of expanded. Right. But my hope is, and my plan and intent is, to watchdog my community, just make sure it's open. And if one lawyer does that in every small community around the state, that's a lot of pressure. It's sort of the state trooper on the side of the highway. He doesn't have to be there every day for you to slow down. You just have to think he's going to be there. And if you know someone's in your community, keeping an eye on things, I think that can be one of many steps in a good direction.
It is so convenient, and I think that's the right word, for people on a board or a commission to have a more private conversation. Let's talk about this where I don't have to express myself in front of these folks. It's a natural human instinct. So I can see how executive sessions get perverted, not out of malice, not like let's make the cabal happen, but people like, this is uncomfortable. Well, government's uncomfortable. Transparency is uncomfortable. That's why, for instance, we passed a law, the Independence Institute, a few years ago, Proposition 104, which said that school unions, when they negotiate with a school district, those negotiations have to be open to the public. Doesn't mean that the district can't go behind closed doors and work on their negotiation strategy, but people ought to see what's on the table and what's being acted upon. This is no different, but the problem is real. People want to learn more about this. People want to get involved, or they want to do this in their neighborhood. Where should they go? What should they do?
Well, the state's government's website has information about it. They're welcome to contact me.
Which government?
Well, I know the Secretary of State has information about public records information. They're welcome to go to my website and contact me, mattroanelaw.com.
mattroanelaw.com.
And I try to answer as many questions as I can. And I must say, you do get a lot of questions sometimes, and you look at it and you say, no, I think they did do it correctly. And so that's I'm happy to give that answer too if they did cover the bases. And it may not be a perfect announcement, but it's good enough. So people are welcome to, and they take advantage of that.
It also takes one person on that board or commission to publicly say, we didn't talk about executive session stuff in that executive session. And it takes one good whistleblower, and again, it's not malicious, but to say, no, this is something we should be talking about here in council chambers, not back in our boardroom.
Exactly.
And having that little pressure of this helps. How's the media been treating you on this?
The media is fine. The other little local public governments, not so much. They're not big fans, and so that gets reported in the media. But they're just doing their job. It's not a favorable position to be in a small community, but it goes with the territory. And you have just as many people on the other side come up and go, "Thank you for doing that." They're not particularly interested in what was said once it's disclosed, but they do appreciate the idea that somebody might, and they're thankful for that. So being a lawyer is kind of a tough road on a good day, and this is a little bit of a even rockier one.
Matt, best of luck to you. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.